All right. So, today on the Vaishnav calendar, there's the appearance of Madhvacharya and Ram Vijayotsav, or the victory of Ram over Ravan. So I thought we could read a bit about that for some, especially for some of the devotees who may not be so familiar. Does anybody know who Madhvacharya is? He's one of the. Mm-hmm. So we are part of which sampradaya?
Brahma Madhava Gaudiya.
Yeah, so he's the Madhava in that. Does anybody know what his philosophy is? No, that came later. It started off as
propagating love of God. Propagating love of God.
So I'll read a little bit here and it'll explain it quite clearly. So his philosophy was Dvaita Dvaitavad, so pure dualism. So prior to that, we had Sankaracharya, and he was propagating monism, isn't it? Or when was it Sankaracharya was? What date was that? Does anybody know the dates? Yeah. So there's a little bit here anyway. So I'll read a bit about it so we can get a bit more understanding. Because we know the old story of Buddha being an incarnation, and we just heard, I think it was Prabhu was talking about that recently, about how he got people to stop following the Vedas because they were basically doing whole-scale animal slaughter. They were not practicing the principle of ahimsa, non-violence, and they were using some obscure text in the Vedas to justify killing animals in a wholesale manner. So Buddha came and taught this non-violence principle. In essence, he got them to follow the Vedic principles, although he told them stop following the Vedas. So by by word, he got them to stop. By deed, they actually started following again. Of course, this is a big part of the Lord's master plan, because when you're dealing with generations and nations of people who are indoctrinated into a certain misleading thing, then the Lord will come and Dhamma Samstapanartaya. He will re-establish the principles of Dharma. So the plan was to do that. First of all, they were misusing the Vedas, so he convinced them to stop using the Vedas and listen to him. And because he was an incarnation then, he was very influential, very convincing. Krishna is known as Ajita, so Krishna, or any of his empowered incarnations, they also have those empowered qualities. And then Shankara, Lord Shiva in the form of Sankaracharya, he came and taught, okay, it's time to reintroduce the Vedas. And then Madhvacharya, he came and taught this dualism that God and the Jiva aren't one and the same. They're eternal individuals. So it's basically it's known as Dvaita, or dualism. And he called his philosophy Tattvavad, meaning arguments from a realistic viewpoint. So in other words, he's saying that prior to that it was illusion. If he's saying this is reality, then he's distinguishing that from illusion. So he was born in Karnataka in the 13th century, and he became a sannyasi as a teenager. Just imagine it. How many teenagers nowadays would become a sannyasi and follow it through? So he was, so he studied all the Shastras, of course, and he was well known for his extreme brevity and condensed expression. And his greatest work is considered to be the Anuvyakhyana, a philosophical supplement to his Bhashya on the Brahma Sutras. So he was a critic of Adi Shankar's Advaita Vedanta and Ramanuja's Vishishtadvaita Vedanta teachings. So because he's part of the Lord's plan to bring us to the point of Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, so he's taking it from Shunyavadi. Shunyavadi means not impersonalism, but voidism, taking it from that. And then it went to Mayavadi. And then he's reintroducing the truth that there's a fundamental difference between the Atma, the individual soul, and Brahman, the ultimate reality, Vishnu. And these are two different unchanging realities with individual soul dependent on Brahma or Brahman. When we refer to Brahman, he's not talking about the impersonal Brahman. He's referring to the Para-Brahman, Krishna. And his teachings disagreed with the monists. And he was saying that liberation is only achievable through the grace of God. And influenced Vaishnavism, the Bhakti movement in India. So therefore, we are the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya. And there's a few things here which is quite interesting. If anyone's ever been to Udupi, they might be familiar with some of this. So he appeared in 1238 near Udupi, Karnataka in South India. He was considered an incarnation of Vayu, the god of wind. He had an unusually strong physique and extraordinary intellectual power. Once a fierce Bengali tiger attacked Madhvacharya's sannyas disciple Satyatirtha. Madhvacharya wrestled the tiger and sent him away with his tail between his legs. Madhvacharya took Diksha at age 5. Can you imagine that? Just think back to when you were 5. You're seeking out a spiritual master. You're probably looking for some, mundane toy or a sweet or something. So, and sannyas at 12, he took sannyas at 12 and left home. He appeared with a mission to fight and defeat Shankara's Mayavad impersonal philosophy. By giving a pure interpretation of Vedanta Sutra, he promoted pure theism. He named his innovative Shastra explanation Dvaita Dvaita Vad, pure dualism. After Shankaracharya, who had previously toured India spreading impersonalism, prior to that, Buddha did the same. Madhvacharya also travelled the length and breadth of India, preaching impersonal theism and devotion to Lord Vishnu. He defeated innumerable Jains, Buddhists, Mayavadis, atheists, logicians, and agnostics. With the hope of meeting Srila Vyasadeva himself, Madhvacharya walked up the Himalayas. Vyasadeva gave him a Shalagram Shila called Astamurti, approved his Bhagavad Gita commentary, and blessed him with deeper realizations of the Shastras. In Udupi, Madhvacharya installed a beautiful deity of Gopal, standing alone, holding a cowherd stick. Okay, who here has had darshan of that deity? Yeah, Udupi Krishna. So that deity has been there for like 700 years or so. It's been there for 700 years, but actually there's another history to this deity. This deity manifested from within a chunk of Gopi Chandan, sacred clay. So there's a little story on that one, which was so down the west coast of India, we have Dwarka, and that is where they get the Gopi Chandan from, the clay which we use for our tilak. And there was one, what do you call it? One trader who was carrying his ship full of, was it salt? I think it was a ship full of salt, and he got stuck, he got grounded. And he came ashore at Udupi, and he was looking for some help. So Madhvacharya, he met Madhvacharya, and Madhvacharya says, I will help your ship get back on the water again. He says, but I just want one thing. And she says, what's that? He says, you have a big lump of gopi chandan, so you just give me that as payment. So he says, well, that sounds like a really good deal, because a lump of clay for letting me get back on with my business of selling this very valuable salt. Salt is a very valuable commodity. Even at one time, you maybe remember the Romans would trade in salt, didn't they? It was so valuable. So he brought the gopi chandan, big lump of gopi chandan. Madhvacharya ordered it to be put into a water tank, and then through his mystic power, he freed the boat, and the man went on his way quite happily. So after a few days, then the gopi chandan had dissolved, and within that clay was the deity of Krishna, which had been worshipped, or who had been worshipped by Rukmini Devi in Dwarka. So if you go and see the darshan of Udupi Krishna, you'll be taking darshan of Sri Rukmini Devi's Ishtadev Krishna. So you can see a picture of him. And they have wonderful ceremonies there. They have Rath Yatra almost every night. They have different chariots according to the donation given. There's a silver chariot, there's a gold chariot, and then there's a diamond chariot. And they have some amazing processions every night. And the whole place is just centered around this deity of Krishna. And this is just like Kruna Bhavan. It's centered around Kodnitai Marpishashi. It's not centered around us and our, wishes and our likes and dislikes. So when everything's centered around the deity, then everything becomes sustainable. So let's just carry on a little bit. So he established 8 mats, temples, to lovingly serve Udupi Krishna. Sannyasi leaders of each mat worship the Krishna deity with a rigorous regimen of ceremonial ritual, punctuality, and impeccable personal conduct. Every Ekadashi they observe Nirjal, total fast from all food and water. So that's every Ekadashi. So that's been practiced for hundreds of years. The Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya originates with the Madhavas. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers thoroughly studied Madhava's works before compiling their philosophy. For the Satsandarbhas, Sri Jiva Goswami drew heavily from Madhava's writings. Jiva Goswami found the Gaudiya philosophy of Achintya Beda Beda Tattva in Madhava's Bhagavat Parya. Sri Chaitanya himself visited Udupi, the seat of Madhava's sect. The Lord introduced Harinam Sankirtan into their sect. The Madhavas and Gaudiyas share many of the same philosophical points. Both consider it necessary to surrender to the lotus feet of the Guru. In Prameya Ratnavali, Srila Baladeva Vijayabhushana summarized the 9 principles common to both Sri Chaitanya's and Madhava's teachings. In Vaishnava Siddhanta Mala, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered all Gaudiya Vaishnavas to carefully study the 9 instructions of truth given by Sri Madhvacharya through our Guru Parampara. So here are the teachings. Sri Madhvacharya's 9 teachings. 1. Bhagavan Sri Krishna alone is the supreme absolute truth, one without a second. 2. He is the object of knowledge in all the Vedas. 3. The universe is real, Satya. 4. The differences between Ishvara, God, Jiva, soul, and matter are real. 5. Jiva souls are by nature the servants of the Supreme Lord Hari. 6. There are 2 categories of Jivas, liberated and illusioned. 7. Liberation, moksha, means attaining the lotus feet of Bhagavan Krishna. In other words, entering an eternal relationship of service to the Supreme Lord. 8. Pure devotional service to Krishna is the only way to attain this liberation. And 9. The truth may be known by pratyaksha, direct perception, anuman, inference, or logic, shabda, spiritual sound, or Vedic authority. Sri Madhvacharya serves as Madhavi Gopi and Radha Govinda's eternal Vrindavan pleasure pastimes. So Sri Madhvacharya ki. And today's class will be a little short because we also have Ram Vijay Yotsava, which we want to describe a little bit of to the devotees. It's especially beneficial to hear about these pastimes on the day that they take place. There's a special energy there. So normally on this day, sometimes there's some kind of celebration. What kind of celebration do we hold on this day sometimes? We burn an effigy of Ravan, signifying the disappearance of Ravan at the hands of Lord Ram. And Ravan was considered to be like personification of lust. Yeah. So if you're familiar with that story, then basically what happens is that Ravan was conquering. He was so powerful, a demon, that the demigods were afraid of him. They couldn't defeat him. He was so powerful. And of course, he had a brother. What was well, actually, more than one brother. Does anyone know any of the names of Ravan's brothers? Kumbhakarna, yeah. So this Ravan and Kumbhakarna were one of the incarnations which Ram, Jai and Vijay were cursed to take birth as. The first one was Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, then Ravan and Kumbhakarna, and then in Krishna Leela, Shishupal and Dantavakra. And they didn't have to take birth as Jai and Jagai and Madai, but it's described that because the Lord was so pleased with their performances, they came for an encore. This is described in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. So as Ravan and Kumbhakarna, they played a particular part in a pastime. And Kumbhakarna was considered to be gigantic. So, and Ravan, he was considered a 10-headed demon. Sometimes they display him with like having a rack of heads along here like that. But other descriptions say that, when he had different heads which would come for different purposes. And we'll find a little bit about the the potency of Ravan here. Now he had already a harem, is it harem or harem, of beautiful women in his city of gold, Lanka. It was considered the city of gold. There was so much gold there that basically it was called the Golden City. And we're not talking about like just some kind of gold-colored paint. So he was so opulent because he'd conquered everywhere. Everyone was afraid of him. Except for Ram, of course, and Ram's devotees. So to cut a long story short, then even though he had so many beautiful wives and paramours, then he seen Sita, and Sita's chastity was so attractive to him. Prabhupada explains this, that the beauty in a woman is in the youth. He also says the beauty of a woman is in her chastity. This is the proper beauty and chastity. So even if physically sometimes one might not be so pretty, and if one is chaste, then this is a special attraction, special energy. Just like sometimes sannyasis are attractive because they have a certain attraction because they're unavailable. This is sometimes the case, isn't it? If something's unavailable, you want it more, just like they create limited stock of something for a limited period of time and then they put the price up high. But I used to trade in American vintage and rare guitars, and as soon as something became rarer, then the price went up, and the more that sold, the ones that were left, the price was going up and up. Hurry before the price goes up. So because it was unavailable, it was considered more valuable. So this is the situation. So Sita Devi, being the eternal consort of Lord Ram and eternally chaste to Lord Ram, then she was so attractive. All the attractiveness which Ravan may have seen in others was nothing in comparison to this. So he completely lusted over her. And he kidnapped her, took her to the golden city of Lanka, and then there was Lord Ram got his posse together and headed over to Lanka through the village of stones. It's not a village, a bridge of stones, which is seen from outer space, and it's known as Adam's Bridge, but it precedes Adam. Adam, because they just cannot conceive of how long it was built, but there has been some scientific research, and it says that the stones in there are not native to that area. They can't conceive of how they got there. So this is giving some material proof of this story. It's not just some mythological thing. So anyway, there was a great battle, and finally Ravan and Ram came face to face. So this is after the construction of the bridge of fire was set all over the kingdom of Ravan. During the fighting with Ravan, every part of his limbs was slashed to pieces by this. This is actually a message on Ram Vijayotsava by His Holiness Jaipatak Swami. Every part of his limbs was slashed to pieces by your sharp arrows, and his heads fell to the face of the earth. Oh, I said, Srila Prabhupada said this part. Sri Ramachandra Vijayotsava Dussehra celebrates the victory of Lord Ramchandra over Ravan during the battle in Lanka. After his soldiers were all defeated, Ravan personally attacked Ram. When they were fighting, Lord Ram managed to sever Ravan's head with an arrow. But as that head fell to the ground, a duplicate one miraculously cropped up in its place. Lord Ram then severed that head, but once again, another one immediately manifested itself as a replacement. Again and again, Lord Ram cut off Ravan's head, until altogether 100 such heads lay on the battlefield. Now, Ravan had another brother, didn't he? What was he called? Mahi Ravan, that's right, like small Ravan. So we have Maha, which is great, and we have Mahi, which is small. And Mahi Ravan also, he was very difficult to die because he kept his life here somewhere secret in a cave, and he had to be killed by simultaneously shooting an arrow into his chest, extinguishing his life here, and something else. I can't remember. Does anyone remember that? There was 2 or 3 things that had to be done simultaneously. So that's why they could never kill him. But finally, someone let the secret out, and then he was taken care of. So here we see that Ram also is Ravan is exhibiting mystic power, that he's not able to be killed here in the normal way. So, yeah, until there's hundreds of such heads lay in the battlefield. Because each time a new head appeared to replace the old one, Lord Ram began to wonder, how is it that my arrows that have conquered so many enemies are now ineffectual against Ravan? The duel continued at a furious pace. Both combatants were obsessed with the desire for killing the other. In fact, several days and nights passed without any break in the fighting. So you might ask, well, how is it Lord Ram is asking, why is his arrows not killing him? You think, I thought he was a Supreme Lord and knew everything. Right, so what would you say to that? You know, Leela, okay. That's true. And Toksha, you had something to add to that?
When Krishna is in his Narayan form, and everything's all in reverence, but he likes to announce that just the essence. So as he becomes more into it, Krishna forgets his, he casts aside his Godhead.
Yeah, just as we cannot understand God, we cannot understand that God can simultaneously be conscious that he's God and cast it aside for his pastimes purposes. So here for the pastime purposes, he's thinking, oh, why is this happening? Just like an ordinary person, he likes to enjoy like that. So we can't conceive of this. This is called achintya, inconceivable. We can hardly even consider, the person next to us what their thoughts and motivations may be, what to consider of the cause of all causes. And also fighting for several nights and days without any break in the fighting. This is not an ordinary thing. At last, when Matali saw that Lord Ram was not gaining his desired victory, he suggested that he use the divine Brahmastra weapon. Being thus reminded of this ultimate weapon, Lord Ram picked up the arrow. That arrow had been constructed personally by Lord Brahma, therefore Brahmastra. Astra means weapon. For Indra's use, and later on, it was presented to Agastya. Garuda supplied the feathers of that wonderful arrow, and the sharp head combined the energy of the fire god Agni and the sun god. Mount Meru and Mount Mandara contributed their gravity to the arrow's weight, and its shaft was made from the subtle ethereal element. This Brahmastra weapon was omnipotent and infallible, and its dazzling effulgence made it rival the splendor of the sun. After empowering the Brahmastra with the required mantras, Lord Ram placed it upon his bowstring. As the monkeys gazed upon that flaming arrow, their hearts became filled with delight, while a dreadful fear penetrated the cores of the hearts of all of Ravan's associates. As Lord Ram pulled the bowstring back to his ear, the earth trembled and the heavens also appeared to become disturbed. When Lord Ram released the Brahmastra, it sped through the air like death itself, and then violently fell upon the chest of the wicked Ravan. After piercing right through the king's heart, that effulgent arrow entered deep into the earth, taking his sinful life along with it. As that awesome Brahmastra came and re-entered Lord Ram's quiver, Ravan dropped the bow from his hand and fell down dead from his chariot. With great transcendental ecstasy, the monkey warriors loudly proclaimed. Now, the monkey warriors, they weren't just monkeys. Who were they? Where did they come from? They were demigods, weren't they? Who took birth. They were ordered to take birth to take part in the Lord's pastimes. They proclaimed Lord Ram's victory as they attacked the fleeing Rakshasa army. From the sky, the demigods shouted, "Sadhu, sadhu, well done, excellent," as they completely covered Lord Ram's chariot with showers of flowers and beat upon their celestial drums. Ravan was a great obstacle to Ram, and he was only destroyed when his heart was pierced. Similarly, we have many bad qualities that form an obstacle to us developing love for God. These bad qualities can only be completely destroyed when the Lord himself removes them from our heart. On this day, we can pray to Lord Ram to destroy those bad qualities in our hearts so we can quickly return to his kingdom where there is eternal happiness. So, and in this regard, also from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, these pastimes, Lord Chaitanya absorbed himself in also. This is recorded by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. From Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya-lila 15:31. In great ecstasy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu returned to his residence. In this way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Gauranga Sundar, performed various pastimes. On the victory day celebrating the conquest of Lanka, a day known as Vijayadashami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dressed up all his devotees like monkey soldiers. Displaying the emotions of Hanuman, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took up a large tree branch and, mounting the walls of a Lanka fort, began to dismantle it. So I don't want anyone dressing up as monkeys and doing any monkey business, destroying the temple today, banging the cars into the walls and, smashing the windows. Where's that demon Ravan? You won't find him in the temple. In the ecstasy of Hanuman, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu angrily said, "Where is the rascal Ravan? He has kidnapped the universal mother, Sita. Now I shall kill him and all his family." Everyone became very astonished to see the emotional ecstasy. Of course, when he says all his family, it doesn't mean, wife and kids. Like in today's war, women and children were never seen anywhere near any battlefield. This would be referring to his demoniac brothers. who were inimical and causing so much havoc also. Everyone became very astonished to see the emotional ecstasy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and everyone began to chant, all glories, again and again. Jai Jai, Bara Bara. Okay, so I thought it would be important to mention these two wonderful pastimes. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, entitled, what's it called? We'll find out in a second. The appearance of the demon Vritrasura. Nearly. Okay, so we'll start off with text 9. Shishikontama Prashashiki Jai. So I'll just do this myself. Savai Bharishi Devebhyo Bhagam Prachaksham Uchakai Adadad Yasha Pitaro Deva Samprashrayam Ripa. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit, the demigods were related to Vishwarupa from his father's side, and therefore he visibly offered clarified butter in the fire, while chanting mantras such as Indraya Idam Swaha. This is meant for King Indra, and Idam Agnaye. This is for the demigod of fire. He loudly chanted these mantras and offered each of the demigods his proper share. We'll do text 3 now. Sa Eva Hi Dado Bhagam Sa Eva Hi Dado Bhagam Paroksham Asuran Prati Yajamano Avahad Bhagam Matri Sneha Vashanuga Saivahi Dado Bhagam Paroksham Asuran Prati Yajamano Vahad Bhagam Matri Sneha Vashanuga Saivahi Dado Bhagam Paroksham Asuran Prati Yajamano Vahad Bhagam Matrisneha Vashanuga Saivahi Dado Bhagam Paroksham Asuran Prati Yajamano Vahad Bhagam Matrisneha Vashanuga. Please chant. Saha He Vishvarupa Eva, indeed, he certainly Dado offered Bhagam share Paroksham without the knowledge of the demigods. Asuran, the demons, Prati, unto Yajamana, performing sacrifice. Avahat offered Bhagam share Matrisneha by affection for his mother. Vasha Anuga being compelled. So, give me a second. Translation. Although offering clarified butter in the sacrificial fire in the name of the demigods, without the knowledge of the demigods, he also offered oblations to the demons because they were his relatives through his mother. Please repeat. Although offering clarified butter in the sacrificial fire in the name of the demigods, without the knowledge of the demigods, he also offered oblations to the demons because they were his relatives through his mother. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Because of Vishvarup's affection for the families of both the demigods and the demons, he appeased the Supreme Lord on behalf of both dynasties. When he offered oblations in the fire on behalf of the Asuras, he did so secretly without the knowledge of the demigods. Om Agyantamrandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Makam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagai Tegarim Yakripa Tamaham Vande Shrigaram Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Although offering clarified butter in the sacrificial fire in the name of the demigods, without the knowledge of the demigods, he also offered oblations to the demons because they were his relatives through his mother. So it must have been a bit difficult to do that because when you're offering these oblations, you're chanting mantras. So how he did it without being noticed, I don't know. But you see, this is a situation where damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because his father was from the demigod side and his mother's from the demon side, the Suras and Asuras. And therefore he was obliged. He couldn't take a side on this. So he was in a very difficult position. If he was seen to be taking one side, then he would be damned by the other side. So he had to remain neutral. This is like the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. They were popular with both the gentle and the ruffians. They could associate with the most erudite, cultured class of people, and they could also associate with and benefit the most rough type of people. Because they see everybody as eternal servant of Krishna, therefore they're not looking from the bodily platform. Pandita Samadarshana. The Pandit sees with equal vision. So just like perhaps sometime we may have been in the past a demigod, and perhaps sometime in the past we may have been a demon or an animal. So it's considered that we have taken birth in all of these species, and maybe many times through all of these species. And so as we were just reading earlier on, Madhvacharya, he was talking about this 2 types of jivas. Does anybody remember what they were? There's 2 types of jivas. Nitya bad boys. Nitya bada. And Nitya siddha, eternally liberated. Nitya bada. So bada, they're quite bad. That's why they're in the material world. They've been bad. Just like Prabhupada, he's given this conversation, and he's explaining Maya. He says, just as Mother Maya, just like when you're naughty as a child, your mother will say, "Go to your room," isn't it? Has anyone ever had that happen to them? No, we've got some well-behaved people here. They must have been good children. Go to your room. So Prabhupada says, when the living entity is naughty, then Maya says, "Go to your womb." So we have to, that says when we misbehave in the material world, then we get sent into another womb. So it's important that we understand that Maya is not an enemy. She is also a devotee of the Lord. But we respect her from a distance. We don't worship Maya, we worship Krishna. Sometimes people think we should worship this demigod and that demigod. They want to hedge all their bets. Worship everybody, then you can't get it wrong. So to some degree, he's doing this here. But you had to do it secretly, because if you worship one person, then you're upsetting another person, isn't it? So in front of the demigods, he had to keep it secret that he was worshipping like this. At the same time, he wanted to try to keep everybody happy. And he wasn't going to get the demigods to compromise. It wasn't he said, "Okay, let's have a mediation here." The demigods and demons are already at each other's necks. Calling a mediation, it's a bit too late for that. And they've already got the swords out. The history is there. So seeing with equal vision means we have to come to the mode of goodness. We have to give up associating with the lower modes. It's interesting that sometimes if we're in the mode of ignorance and then someone disturbs us, right, say we're sleeping, right, and then someone wakes us up, we get a bit disturbed. "Oh, why are you waking me up?" What's that doing? It means we're coming out of the mode of ignorance into the mode of passion. We're ready for a fight. How dare you speak to me like that? We're quite happy to remain in our ignorance. And then someone, even with some nice words, someone can become angry. It's considered that if you try to give an angry person good advice, they become even more angry. So there you have to take the right opportunity to do that. If someone has got some motivation. So like Ravan, he had his lust was immense. And because he was being frustrated, in the sense that he was being attacked to surrender Sita, then he personally came onto the battlefield. First he sent all his soldiers, and then he sent, then he came himself. And he was trying to use anger to defend his lust. So this is the situation. Unless we use this for Krishna's service, just like the monkey warriors, they weren't going to the demons and saying, "My dear demon, please accept this humble arrow." They weren't like that. They were also angry that Sita had been kidnapped by this demon. So this is the proper use of anger. And sometimes between the demigods and the demons, there's some conflict there. And the demigods, they're also devotees. That's why they're called devas. But because they're materialistic, generally they forget. But they remember when they need something. Just like sometimes people don't come to the church or the temple or the mosque or wherever they go to worship until they need something. Or they go regularly because they want to assure some kind of success, either materially or spiritual. And because Vishwarup had affection for both sides, then he couldn't deny doing one for one. But if either side were to find out that he was doing this, so he had to be quite diplomatic about it. In front of the demigods, he was offering oblations, but secretly he was offering other oblations. So this gives testament to Lord Chaitanya's statement that everybody's friend is nobody's friend. You can't please everyone all the time, just like Prabhu was saying that recently, that it's impossible. Because simply by trying to please one person, you're automatically going to displease another person. So the question is then, who should we try to please? Who should we try to please?
Please someone by pleasing whom everyone else can become pleased.
Say that again, please.
Please someone by pleasing whom rest everyone else can become pleased or become pleased.
And who's that someone? Yeah. That's considered. Does anybody remember any pastimes in this regard?
Draupadi and Krishna's pastime when the Pandavas were in exile in the forest, and that time Draupadi, Durvasa Muni, Duryodhana had sent Durvasa Muni to see the Pandavas in their camp, and he said, you may bless them, but he had his ill motive. When Durvasa Muni went there to see the Pandavas, and he said, like, I've come with my 10,000 disciples, and I will have lunch at your place, but first I need to go and take a bath, and it's my Gayatri time, so once I return, then we'll all have food together. And Pandavas had had their meals, and Yudhishthira Maharaj passed this message to Draupadi, but Draupadi said that we all have had our meals and there's nothing left. But Draupadi has this Akshay Patra, this utensil which never goes off, say, which can always keep on producing food. So Draupadi said, even I have taken and there's nothing left in there, and then what to do? So in that helplessness state, she prayed to Lord Krishna. Krishna appeared from Dwarka. Straight he came from the Dwarka, and then he said that, no, there's still some food, check, there is some food. And Krishna said, I'm feeling hungry and there's still some food, check. So Draupadi had a second look, and she could find that there was a small morsel of rice there in the utensil, and then Krishna said, give it to me, I will have it. So Draupadi gave it to Krishna, and Krishna was so pleased that Durvasa Muni, he already felt that, okay, I'm so full, I cannot go now. And he went back with all his 10,000 disciples.
Yeah, perfect. Great story, thanks. Did everybody get that? So just like sometimes we have some festivals and we wish we had a Draupadi's pot because we can see prasadam's running out. Draupadi's pot never ran out, did it? This is Krishna's mystical benediction. And there was another one, wasn't there? Does anyone remember another one where Krishna is satisfied and everybody's satisfied?
There's one with the Brahman's wives, and they didn't want to go back, and Krishna said, just go back, and I'll make sure all your husbands are satisfied, because they thought they would be rejected. So they went back, and they were satisfied.
And another one is Sudama Brahman, Sudama Vipra, when he visited Dwarka, his wife, they were so poor that they actually had one cloth between them. They couldn't leave the house at the same time. This was described that, they'd somebody wanted to go out, they'd have to swap the cloth. Okay, your turn to go out. I had this description. And then his wife, not that they had no cloth whatsoever, but then because he was a friend of Krishna, they went to school together. They were in Sandipani Muni's Gurukul. Although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he doesn't have to be taught anything by anybody. Then he went and he learned all these arts and sciences immediately. For us to learn something, repetition is the mother of learning, isn't it? We have to keep on repeating it until we've made a samskara in our mind that we can't forget it. We have to go through so much strenuous endeavor to learn things. And some things we learn easy because we're very interested. So our faculties for absorbing are when we're interested in something. And when we're not interested in something, then what happens is we just switch off, isn't it? And if our mind is distracted, then we can't really hear very well. So therefore it's important that we keep on attentively trying to direct the mind to hear the holy name. The more we hear the holy name, then the better everything else will be. Our hearing in class will be better. If we're switching off in japa, we'll switch off in class. And if we switch off in class, we'll switch off to the important instructions which are relevant for our day-to-day life as devotees. And then at some point along the way, we'll wonder, what am I doing here? When we start to wake up a little bit. It may be a few weeks, it may be a few years. And then we start to question it, and then doubts come up. And doubts are not a bad thing. It means intelligence is working, questioning, why am I here? What's all this about? Why have I been chanting Hare Krishna for the last 20 years? Or however long it takes us. So anyway, he went to school together with Krishna, Sudama Vipra. And because he was so poor, his wife said, well, Krishna is the king, the king of Dwarka. Why don't you just go and see him? He'll help us out. He says, no, I don't want to do that to him. I want to just be his friend. I don't want to go and beg from my friend. So she did a good job of a wife and nagged him nicely so that it's better to go to see Krishna. I don't want to do that, but the nagging's getting more intolerable, so let me go to Krishna. That's less painful. So she used the nagastra, the nagging weapon. But of course, they were poor and they were very humble. Sometimes some Brahmins have got big sponsors and they may live opulently. Other times they're so poor, but they don't take up an occupation because they live by simply giving knowledge and receiving donations. So anyway, he went to Dwarka. Before he left the house, she gave him a little pouch of cloth and put some broken rice in it and tucked it in his waistband. He didn't want to take it, but she insisted. So she said, you have to go with something. You can't go to visit your friend with nothing. You have to offer something. So Krishna, being omniscient, he knew what was going on from the start. But of course, in his Leela, again, he pretends he doesn't know what's going on. So when Sudama arrived, Krishna and was it Rukmini met him? Rukmini and Krishna met him. And what the first thing they did? Yeah. And then they did arti. They worshipped him because he was a Brahmin. So Krishna was shown the ideal household that when a Brahmin comes, they should be worshipped. And then he fed him and all the rest of it, looked after him, asked about his welfare. And Sudama he said, no, everything's fine, no problem, TK. And he wasn't going to reveal that they were struggling. And then Krishna says, what's that in your waistband? He said, oh, nothing. And then he snatched it and he took a little grain. He says, oh, is this an offering for me? And Sudama was so embarrassed because it was like some broken rice. It was not an offering to give to anybody, basically. And Krishna took it and he says, oh, by this offering, you've satisfied the whole universe. And also, then Rukmini said, oh, what's this? I want some as well. So she took some, and then on account of that, then she gave him benediction because she's also goddess of fortune. She gave a benediction that there was so much material wealth bestowed upon him. And when Sudama went back to his shack, then it became a palace and there was maidservants and there was so much opulence there. But he used it all in Krishna's service because he wasn't looking for that. So he wasn't enamored by it. He wasn't distracted by it. It's not that Bhogashwarya Prasaktanam. So Bhoga Ishwarya, what does that mean? Bhoga means sense enjoyment, and Aishwarya, opulence. Ishwara is control. Aishwarya is opulence. So we get distracted by Bhogashwarya. In Kali Yuga, we get distracted by like a metal car with rubber tires. We think, oh, I could bloop for that. Or, some other thing. I even know, no offense, because everyone's got their own Maya, but I know one devotee who blooped to play computer games. And that is when computer games were like really terrible. Like 30 years ago, it was like, doop, doop, doop. So Maya can invest anything of the material energy with her attractive potency to help us give up Krishna if we're not sincere. She can give us some philosophy. If we want to not surrender to Krishna, she'll give us a reason not to. We can justify it, we can come up with some philosophy, whatever. But if we want to serve Krishna sincerely, no matter what comes our way, we'll use it in Krishna's service, then we won't be contaminated by it. So, therefore, if we're aiming to please Krishna, Krishna's representatives, then everything is auspicious. But when we uphold our own opinion, which is separate from the authorized opinion, then it creates so much distress, distraction, friends and enemies. But the common denominator is Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. What does Prabhupada say about it in his books? What do the sadhus say about it? What's in the Shastra? Is this a devotional activity? Is this a devotional mood? And if it's not, then we say, well, this is something which is not auspicious. This is something of the lower modes. So in this way, we can understand that this science of civilization is a spiritual science. We have to learn to identify. And it takes time because in Kali Yuga, we have short memory and we have a lot of things set up against us. But still, Krishna says, in this endeavor, there's no loss or diminution. So we simply try our best, try to be sincere, try to be aligned with Krishna's instructions. And the spiritual master, by his mercy, will get the full benediction of Krishna. So, in this situation, if both the demigods and the demons had decided to accept Krishna as the ultimate authority, then he could have given instruction where they could avoid any kind of fighting. So this is... the demigods left it to the last minute, and then they approach Krishna. They try to sort it out themselves. And of course, the demons don't accept Shastra anyway. So this is the thing. Even if you give good advice to demon, then they just become more offensive. Therefore, we have to be careful not to preach the glories of the holy name to a faithless or atheistic person. So that doesn't mean to say we don't preach. It means we may preach on a different level. We may preach on the level they can understand, and we can show the inconsistencies in their philosophies and their concepts. So I'll just stop there. Is anyone any comments or questions? Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. I just have one small question. I'm wondering, do we have any information on when on this earth the pastimes of Lord Ram took place?
Information what?
On when Lord Ram's pastimes took place on this earth?
When they took place, a long time ago. Somebody may know. I've heard it before, but it's certainly a lot longer than what the scientists would have us think humans have been around for. Does anybody remember? Is it like 1 trillion years ago or something? Treta Yuga. Of course, these pastimes take place again and again. Just so, like example, Lord Nrsimhadev's pastimes. So the last time they took place was not the only time, and you'll find different accounts in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam is not like, what do you call it? Chronological, exactly, thanks. It's not chronological, it's like, okay, we start at the first canto, it's not like a historical thing, okay, here we start, blah, 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 and then next was this, next was this. And describing the glories of the Lord, for example, Lord Nrsimhadev, sometimes it's described that when Lord Nrsimhadev appeared, he killed all the soldiers and then killed Hiranyakashipu. And then sometimes it says that he killed Hiranyakashipu and then dealt with all these soldiers. So these are not contradictions, these are the Lord's pastimes taking place at different times. And just to highlight different aspects of the Lord's wonderful transcendental nature, then they put in there to describe the Lord's glories. It's not like a itihasa or Purana, it's not like a history. But in terms of, so whether it was the previous Treta Yuga or before, I don't know. But it's certainly a long time ago. Don't know if that helps you now. And of course, historically, we might think, okay, that was a long time ago. But on the appearance days or special celebrations, then the Lord is present in those days also, because the Lord's pastimes are eternal. Just like geographically, we could say this is Scotland, Lesmahago, but spiritually, we see this as the Lord's holy dam. This is like non-different from Sri Vrindavan Dam. Prabhupada says that these temples are oases of the spiritual world. Okay, anything else? Iskon Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Ramachandra Bhagavan ki, Sri Madhavacharya ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.